Today I'm delighted to welcome Mike Keating, who's the CEO of the Managing General Agents Association, MGAA. The MGAA is leading really the voice as we see it in the UK and the MGA sector, which represents and helps supports managing general agents as they drive things like innovation and growth across the insurance market, and a good couple of points for us to step through today. And I think one of the research pieces that led us to this conversation, quite interestingly, I think under Mike's leadership, the association has actually started being able to champion best practice, collaboration. I think for today, quite interested to see the role in how MGA specifically are shaping the future for insurance. So with that, Mike, thanks again very much for attending today. And would you like to give your own introduction and maybe kind of overview of the MGAA?
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Delighted to be here. Looking forward to having a sort of very interesting conversation around a range of topics. So Mike Keating, thanks for the introduction. I'm the CEO of the MGAA, as you mentioned. We are a not-for-profit trade association serving the members of the MGA sector. We look after over 260 MGAs. We have 70 insurer members, and we have a very valued 100 plus supplier members serving the needs of the MGA sector through a whole range of products and services. Our role effectively is to be absolutely the heart of the MGA sector, ensuring that our membership proposition remain completely relevant to support our members' business today, but just as importantly, have an eye on the future of what propositions we can bring into our membership to help them grow their business in a profitable way for the benefit of all stakeholders. So that's a quick picture postcard of what we do.
Perfect. Did much more justice than I did. So very good. I think kind of you mentioned a comment there about keeping one eye on the future, and I suppose maybe putting AI to one side and maybe just more kind of technology in the broad sense. But in the last couple of years, I suppose, how are you seeing your community either ask things of you or working with you in a slightly different way with kind of the general explosion of different types of technology into the MGA space?
Yeah, I suppose through my lens, and certainly more importantly through the lens of our members, I think when you look at, and I don't like the word back office, but let's call it operational side, from the front end in terms of risk appetite, risk profiling, data enrichment. I think there's been significant investment by the MGA community in that pricing and that forensic pricing and risk, which has really helped complement their relationship with their capacity providers in terms of identifying risk and pricing it properly and correctly and those data enrichment tools supported by the increase in data scientists in the sector has really helped that. I think if I then go down the value chain, Danny, I don't think there's been the same level of investment to date. When I look at operational efficiency, the structure of management information, the ingestment of that management information between relevant parties. And as I say, that's the operational piece. And I think when I talk to members and if I sit on panels or moderate panels, there's a general consensus that perhaps that has been slightly, not say ignored, but the investment has been at the front end in terms of refining pricing and the areas I've just discussed. So I think, and no doubt we'll discuss it, I think there is a slight sort of pivot towards of saying, okay, we've invested at that front end now. How can we actually improve further both the stakeholder journey all the way through in terms of our proposition, and then most importantly, what technology and how can that technology support that sort of a strategy?
And it's probably going to come down to things like revenue and business growth potentially. But what do you think has kind of led that initial focus on, call it the front door type of area, opposed to maybe focusing on some of those operational areas you're
Well,
increasing?
yeah, it's a good point. I think first and foremost, it does provide a competitive advantage. If you've got risk identification and then you've got the various data enrichment tools, then that does allow underwriters. It complements the underwriters in being able to price that risk, as forensically, to use that word again, as possible, clearly identify the potential sort of claims or risk management required for that risk. And you have these sort of, software online tools which can do that in complementary to the underwriter's own eyes and their own expertise. And as we all know, the MGA community relies on third party capital. So that third party capital, insurers who are lending their balance sheet on to MGAs, would want to see a consistent level of positive underwriting earnings over the term of that agreement. And there's a general sense that, MGAs being more innovative, more agile, more nimble, they are able to ingest and use those sort of technology tools to basically outperform competitors. And I think if I go back sort of, let's say 10 years, it was a little bit of an arms race at that front end about who could get the best tool. But now I think it's become very much a hygiene factor, and even more so in dependent on the product line you're a specialist in.
And then, and I suppose actually that the table stakes piece is quite interesting. I suppose also, I mean, there's no shortage of um, accessible integrated tools out there now as well, which probably makes the where there might have been a risk appetite to take that new technology into the business, actually it is quite standard and everybody's doing it, so it becomes the norm, so to speak.
Yeah, and you have that, everything sort of cloud technology, which before makes it a lot easier. You can switch on and switch off. So I think and also let's be very clear, MGAs do not have what I affectionately call necessarily the system sandwich, which a lot of insurers have, in terms of legacy systems which have never been decommissioned, and therefore have that innovative and that agility to actually use the tools you've just referenced
Yeah.
and implement them across the business in a very, very quick in a quick manner, which therefore makes a very quick difference to their distribution and ultimately to the end customer.
So maybe kind of stepping into the operational efficiencies that you've maybe suggesting were the laggard, but now becoming a priority focus. So again, I think something you bring to this podcast that we haven't had on previous conversations is that MGA focus. So what are the types of things that they're either coming to you for input or to understand what's going on in the market? But what are the areas that they're thinking of focusing on with those operational efficiencies?
Yes. So you look across, in particular, as I referenced at the start, our very valued supplier network. We have expert suppliers providing products and services, including IT proprietary platforms and software, which really can change dynamically the operational efficiencies of MGAs. And at an ingestion rate which can be done far quicker, as I said, than necessarily the larger sort of insurers. So across a whole range of things, it still amazes me, and you can tell by the color of my hair, I've been in this industry a long time. It still amazes me about how bordereaux are still sort of transferred between parties and how that's ingested. When you just think, we're in sort of 2025 going into 2026, surely all bordereaux should be done automatically using APIs and the data should all be matched. But that still has some way to go. The matching of sort of claims data with risk data, that again is not necessarily as smooth as it should be. So in terms of us as an association, what we provide is a fantastic platform for our community, and that's MGAs, insurers, and suppliers, to share and actually showcase, these different areas of technology for which can assist and really advance, that operational efficiency, which then allows, and I think it's an important point here, this stuff is all complementary to the current sort of, FTEs of these organizations. But what it does do is it allows sort of those staff to get on with perhaps what the executives say are the really important parts of their role, as opposed to being necessarily distracted for very, very important sort of tasks, but which actually technology should actually be doing for them. So we have a whole program of market briefings which our suppliers, as part of their sort of standard membership, can provide and just showcase all these different sort of areas where they can assist both MGAs and insurers, and that's something we will continue to sort of showcase on behalf of our members.
So almost bubbling up the green shoots of success and then
Yeah,
using
yeah,
briefings as a mechanism to share.
yeah, yeah. And of course, again, MJ's having that agility. If they see something from one of our suppliers which they know immediately is going to really improve their business, certainly from an operational piece, and again, it could still be at the front end, Danny, then their ability, as say, to ingest and actually shape their business to actually bring that and actually sort of speed to market is unrivaled, and that's why one of the key drivers why the MJ sector, UK, Ireland, Europe, and internationally is growing so quickly. If you look at Europe, MJ business is growing 23% year on year in Europe, which is absolutely fantastic.
And you kind of mentioned like the executive focus and how they're, I suppose, trying to unblock and provide tools and technology to shift away some of those tasks that perhaps don't need their time. I suppose in the topic of call it the business strategy for those MGAs and even potentially how you're using briefings to share knowledge and expertise. But are you seeing any things about how they're approaching kind of a variety of different AI tools? But is there any things that you're kind of seeing to how they're looking into how AI can help their businesses as an end?
Yeah. If I may, I'll come on to that and answer your question directly. But I think one of the key learnings which the MGA community has really taken on board, and that has been driven through a number of even at our conference, some AI panels at our conference, is that you know before you write one check, before you even think about writing a check, you need to have a clear plan as a business as a what is it you want the technology to do for you. B, if it does, and most likely include AI, what are you expecting the AI to do for you? And thirdly, how does that kind of complement and deliver that operational efficiency alongside your valued staff? Because there's clearly sort of, a littered roadway of people writing checks very quickly without actually taking that breath and time to fully understand what tools they need, how they're going to use those tools, what's the long-term benefit of the business, is it future-proof, or does it stop after 3 years and you've got to pay the money all again, or can you actually sort of build on it to make that happen? So that, without doubt, is the first thing I think the community has really sort of taken on board, rather than sort of spend money which they're not going to get back and they end up having to reverse out and then go back in down a different route. When I look at, in particular around the AI tools, we have members who are using AI to triage, broker presentations, which then quickly actually triage and remove information which is not relevant to pricing or risk analysis. One of my members said they've used that and their productivity on underwriting has gone up nearly 50%. So that just shows in the past how underwriters were having to pour through presentations to actually extract the risk information. Another one of my members was interestingly was talking to me a couple of weeks ago about how they're using AI tools to really forensically discover fraud. And actually improve sort of loss ratio. But what they're doing in terms of that particular member was an insurer member, and what they were doing, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, Dan, is that they were sharing that with their MGA partners to actually help the MGA partner improve their risk selection, the business they underwrite. And actually what that does is that both parties, the capital provider and the MGA, are going to benefit in that in
Mhm.
terms of the underwriting sort of loss ratio performance. And that leads to, in most instances, a triggering of a positive profit share.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think it's absolutely fantastic when, in this particular instance, when an insurer is basically saying, I want to pay a profit share and I want to help you try and trigger that. And we have the tools which we want to share with you. And I think more of that across the industry. And I do see sort of, I do see momentum for people doing that and sharing, as opposed to, well, this is us and we can't share that with you. That just helps create sort of even great sort of collaboration around the sector for the benefit of everybody involved, not least the end customer, which
Mhm.
obviously is the most important person in this chain.
And interesting that and I hadn't considered that kind of profit share and sh kind of sharing of the technology and so that both could benefit. And do you think that that approach and being able to do that is underpinned by technology, or do you think there's other factors that are maybe leading towards that level of
I,
collaboration?
I, it's a important contributory factor in the overall success of a capital and an MGA relationship. So, if you go right at the start, the MGA will be demonstrating they have particular underwriting expertise in a particular segment or commercial or personal lines. They will be able to demonstrate that to their capital because their capital wouldn't deploy their balance sheet if they didn't. That MJ will have excellent data lake used by technology to cut and slice the data, including claims. Hopefully, the way they want to do that, and then effectively where I'd like to see the partnership start working even further is where, in particular, capital, where in the main they will have a greater data lake, if for argument's sake, than perhaps the MGA, that there was a greater sharing of that technology tools, data, just to improve and give everyone a real greater chance of actually delivering a positive underwriting earnings performance. I think some of our members, well, not I think, I know, some of our members have been slightly frustrated at the unwillingness of some of their capital providers to share perhaps some of their own data or some of their tools to actually help them in that partnership. But as I said, my positive view, Dan, is that that momentum is starting to change. And my view is that insurers in particular, or capital in particular, who embrace that sort of partnership and looking to share the tools they've invested in for the benefit of their MGAs, they will certainly be the winners of tomorrow.
Yeah,
Because you then got a very strong partnership underpinned, to use your phrase, by technology, allowing partners to concentrate on what they want to do: distribution, growing the business, new product introduction, all that sort of stuff, not having to worry or concern themselves that the engine room underpinned by technology is working efficiently, and that's the bit they need to get to. So
yeah,
again, a long answer, but it's a critical component of a successful MGA.
yeah. Long answers are fine. Don't worry, I'll do them myself. Um, so just something you mentioned a couple of moments ago was almost the approach, your statement of don't write a check until you've got these checks and
Yeah,
balances in place. And we're talking to someone else previously, and actually, I think when people think about the use of AI initiatives, it can quite quickly fall into the trap of I need to use this because it's AI rather than it's a means of being able to resolve a problem. And I think actually, I think it applies to the MGAs as well. Is the thought process and the practices that you go through any technology implementation or any transformation actually should be applied to this new world that we live in. And just because it's I suppose a little bit shiny in the label and
yeah,
the latest buzzword, actually you shouldn't sacrifice the internal guardrails that you have internally to ensure you get value from every pound spent.
yeah, and agree. And again, I'll borrow another one of our members' analogies, which I found really interesting and insightful. He sort of described AI as a young puppy, and he said that if you don't train that puppy, then it's going to go off and do all these sorts of things you don't want the puppy to do. But gradually, you start training that puppy, and that puppy sort of understands what it can and what it cannot do. And they use that analogy alongside when you're looking to invest in AI. You have to, as well as doing the investment start and the analysis at the front. Once you get it, it's not the sort of it's not necessarily the sliding doors moment you want. You have to continue to sort of train it, work with it, understand how it's impacting your business, and then actually it becomes trained, and then it becomes embedded. So their observation was that sometimes people buy the puppy and then don't bother training it, and then it causes all the issues. So I thought that was quite a very interesting analogy, and I'm sure if the member sort of hears this, he won't mind me sort of sharing that, because it really sort of brought the whole thing to life, actually, Danny.
Yeah, it's not a flicker switch; it's investment.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Good. So, obviously, part of what I wanted to go through today was about maybe understanding some of the practical applications. But actually, even in your overview, you've given a few examples of what your membership's doing. I suppose, is there anything that stand out for you at the moment even that front office or operational area, but anything that's maybe stand out for you, which you think is actually like a really good representation around how innovation is working for MGA?
Yeah, I think the underwriting, the reference I gave about underwriting efficiency is great, because if you think of that across the value chain, first and foremost, the customer
Hmm.
is going to get a very sort of quick response in terms of the time it wants. The broker, if the broker distribution is also getting exactly what they need for their customer in terms of delivery from the MGA member, and the MGA is actually providing a level of service, the ability to spend more time on key specialist underwriting to support their brokers. So that's one way up to then one way of the value chain. And then if you're providing that capital, then effectively, you have a greater confidence that, those tools are both refining the risk appetite, and actually the profitable growth is gonna continue. And I think talking to a lot of our members, and they're all talking around AI and different technology and how to improve it. They're all sort of quite fixated and saying, well, we don't want to run before we can walk on this. And what are the key areas which we can ingest, which we know will make a quick difference, are complementary to our staff. I want to underline that, because in any conversations I've had with insurers, suppliers, or MGAs, no one has used the phrase that this will replace staff. Okay, it's all about complementary and allowing people to have a higher bandwidth to do what they really are very good at, as opposed to from that piece. So I think it's an exciting time. I think it will be in bite-sized chunks. I think it would be dangerous for someone to sort of basically carpet bomb everything and say, like, let's go out. And we've already touched on the sort of the risks in doing that, because then my analogy, the puppy remains completely untrained. But I think what MGA sector will do quite cleverly, it will look at, well, what are we doing at the front end? How can we improve that front end to the benefit of our distribution and the end customer? Okay, if we're comfortable with that, then where are we doing from an operational perspective? Where are the areas we're currently inefficient? Is the MI giving us the dashboard which says we are inefficient? And what technology and what tools can we use to improve that? And how quickly can we ingest them to be complementary to what we do elsewhere, to continue to deliver an excellent solution to our broker distribution and customers? So I think they'll look at it that way, as opposed to let's have a big sort of spaceship and land it all and try and do it all in one go.
Yeah, and success breeds success. So if you set something that's achievable, get that done, grow and grow and grow, rather than a 5-year transformation program, and we all know
Yeah,
how it goes.
yeah. I suppose the other thing I would add is that, and it's something we covered at our annual conference, and I still think it does exist. There is still this sort of myth busting little bit around AI in particular. What bits are real, what bits are unreal, and what bits are certainly going to appear, but maybe not for 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
And I think I'd probably revert back to my previous observation, is that, amongst that sort of, you know, environment or landscape, it again underpins the needs, before you even sort of engage anyone, really do the forensic analysis of your business as to what you want these tools to achieve and deliver, and then go and certainly engage the MGAA supplier network with that plan. And then you've got sort of a foundation to actually talk around what's available, what's not available, and will it happen. If you're going, and you referenced it very well earlier, if you're going because it's a fad and you think, well, I have to be involved in the AI world, then I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Great. So, I mean, Michael, maybe any parting comments?
My only parting comment is that if anyone sort of comes across this podcast, which has been greatly avoidable, who are not a member of the MGAA, then please reach out to me, because we'd like to have a conversation from that perspective. For all of our existing members, please ensure you look at our website, look out for our great schedule of events, and importantly, coming back to this enjoyable podcast, certainly the areas which our value supplier members talk around, their skills, their products and services, which can improve your business. So that would be my sort of final message, Dan, if I may.
No, 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 no. And yeah, thanks, Mark. I mean, as I said, I think your unique perspective and kind of the areas that you focus on have been actually insightful, but actually a completely different lens to some of the questions and input we usually get. So,
Right.
yeah, Mike, thank you very much, and thanks for attending.
Really enjoyed it. All the
Thanks.
best.